So the plan is today we're going to talk through some of the latest research that MaxContact has undertaken, take you through a few use cases of how organizations are using conversation analytics to remove guesswork from their day-to-day operations. And then we have got an overview of our conversation analytics platform and take you through some of the newer releases and use cases, that the data and insight that businesses are utilizing to make better decisions for their businesses. So that is the high level agenda. So today, everything as usual is being recorded. So if you do need to drop off for whatever reason, then please feel free to do that and we'll send you the recording afterwards. We've got the Q&A feature in the Zoom panel as well. So you can either use Q&A or the chat functionality, which is absolutely fine. Just pop them in there. And then we'll get back to any questions at the end. And if you find the use of the content useful, then please feel free to share with your teams as well. So as you can see, these things are live. This is why we do it live, to get these questions, get the dialogue going between you guys and our team here at MaxContact. So I'll get started. So over to intros. So if you haven't met myself before, I'm Kayleigh Tait. I'm the marketing director at MaxContact. I've been with the business for 5 years now, involved in driving the growth of the organization, enhancing the brand through innovative strategies. I've got over 15 years experience working in a variety of different sectors, but in B2B, B2C, and commodity-led businesses as well. So leading marketing and sales functions across telecoms, customer engagement, and then more recently into the world of contact center, AI, and customer engagement technology. So I really love these webinars when we're talking about things that are close to my heart around contact strategies, insights, and data, and really utilizing intelligence that you've got within your organization to make sure that you are being as effective as possible with your contact strategies, whether that's to drive revenue in your organizations or to drive debt collection, or even just to enhance your customer service and brand. So yeah, thank you very much for being with us today. I will be joined by Conor, I'm hoping, at some point. So Conor is our principal product manager. He leads product strategy at MaxContact, focuses on AI, omnichannel, and the user experience. He's got a really strong background in building customer-first solutions. He works closely with a lot of our clients today to ensure that every product that we develop delivers a measurable value. He loves sitting down with clients, taking them through the latest and greatest in product, learning from the different use cases, and understanding some of the complex challenges that organizations are dealing with, different teams are dealing with, and translating them to make them simple and bringing them back to our product roadmap. So Conor is at the forefront of shaping how contact centers adopt AI and digital technology, and has been speaking with many businesses about how to do this over the last 18 months or so. I'm sure he will pop up and say hello at some point when he manages to join, but you starting off with me anyway. So we're going to cover off some of the latest research that we have found through our benchmark report, and some things that we're seeing as trends in the industry. So we'll start by talking about things impacting contact strategies and why they need to get smarter. So there's 4 big forces that we're seeing that are happening all at the same time. So first, we've got costs are rising while competition increases. So I think it's fair to say, I think most sectors are feeling this. Whether it's a barrier to creating an organization in general or launching new technology has lowered so much so that competition is able to move agilely or move with agility, and be on the heels of maybe organizations that have been out there for 10, more mature organizations, 10, 15 years. The speed that you can get to market now has rapidly increased. So things like that are the reasons why competition's increasing. Every interaction is getting more expensive, and high attrition means that teams are working harder just to stand still. So that is probably something that will resonate with a lot of us. The second force here is that effectiveness is stagnating. So we know that sales conversions and first call resolutions are both trending in downward trends for many businesses, which tells us that conversations are becoming more complex and harder to resolve or harder to get to that outcome on that first attempt. The third theme here is that the commercial risk of poor CX is growing as well. So we know that customers switch providers faster when service falls short. If you're not doing a good job on those first calls, whether it is sales or service, people are very quick to move. There's no loyalty that can be had in those first few minutes of an interaction with a client. So many organizations struggle to route customers accurately to the right place, which is quite unbelievable at some points. But we do believe that that creates inconsistency and avoidable friction as well for both the consumer and I suppose the team handling those conversations as well. And then finally, the last trend on here is around consumer behaviour shifting. So things like AI call screening, digital buying journeys, social search. It's making people harder to reach and changing where and how they want to engage with you as an organization. So it's not just one challenge, it is the combination of rising costs, falling effectiveness, CX pressure, shifting consumer patterns means that traditional contact strategies and how we thought about a contact strategy even 3 years ago really needs to start to evolve. So let's dive into some of the data that sits behind this benchmark report. And welcome to Conor. It did distract me slightly seeing you here, but I'm very glad you've joined. So this was from a survey of 300 contact centre leaders in the UK. We looked across the industry, and one thing is clear, that contact centre teams or customer engagement teams are being asked to do more with either the same level of resource or less. Our benchmark report shows a significant increase in agent workload, with over 52% of contact centres reporting that workloads have gone up this year. And that's a 10-point rise since last year. So this means that agents are handling more conversations, more complexity, with more pressure than before. And that's reflected in agent churn, which remains stubbornly high. And also the average turnover is 31% for that churn rate. And that level of attrition is costly. So obviously there's a financial cost of the whole recruitment and training and retraining, but it's sometimes the intangible costs of lost expertise. So that just that knowledge that is gained through osmosis and over time can lead to inconsistent CX as well for organizations. The wider economic conditions in the market as well is having a role to play and impacting operational metrics too. So you have got teams up against those factors. So debt collection, for example, are facing tougher conversations. First call resolution rates dropping from 43% last year to 37% this year. So it's not that teams have suddenly got worse, it's just customers are under more pressure, cases are more complex, and it is taking longer to resolve issues. So when we're talking about cost rising, it's not just the cost of a call, it's the cost of inefficiency, lost knowledge, stretched teams trying to maintain service levels in increasingly challenging conditions. And that all compounds. So it sounds like a series of mini fires that are burning, and it's probably not something that when all these are compounding that you can potentially let continue to burn. The benchmark report also goes into first call close rates, specifically around those sales success metrics. They've dropped from 28 to 25% year on year. And on the surface, it might seem like a small shift, but in a high volume environment, a 3 point depreciation has a meaningful impact on revenue. So again, it's similar sort of themes. It's telling us things are harder. It's harder to convert on that first interaction, whether that's due to a tougher buying conditions, that increased competition, lead quality issues, or more complex conversations. We're seeing daily sales calls fall from 65.5 calls per agent to 59 calls this year. And that means that agents are spending longer on conversations, dealing with perhaps more resistance on calls, facing more admin, or prioritizing fewer but more complex calls. So either way, it signals that teams are working harder for the same result or sometimes for a lesser result. And that's similar. The picture was very similar in the debt collection stats that you saw before. So when we look at customer experience across the industry, and just to reiterate, customer experience isn't just a service role. This could be customer experience across your sales interactions, your debt collection interactions. It has a wider impact than service. So across the industry, the risks of having poor interactions or long wait times are bigger than before. And it is a commercial risk now as well. And the data proves it. Customer satisfaction is the #1 KPI for a lot of contact centers, and that's chosen by 48% of leaders. We know businesses are continuing to use CX as a way of organizations trying to seek that differentiation in the competitive space. So the margin for error is shrinking. Many organizations are thinking about this in the same way, and it's a case of sometimes one-upmanship and how you can increase your experience and offer that first touch point really resonates with customers. You're making that great impact from the very start of the interaction. But when we start to dig into the operational metrics behind CX, we can see why satisfaction's under pressure. So you've got the first call resolution or outcomes is at 41%. This means that customers aren't getting what they need in most instances in the first attempt. Every additional touch point could drive that frustration. It definitely drives additional cost and ultimately impacts whether a customer chooses to stay with you or switch. We're also seeing pressure in the journey before a customer even reaches your team. So call abandonment sits at 4%. While that's slightly improved year on year, it still represents in those higher volume situations thousands of customers who gave up before they got help or got to speak to your team. So that's lost loyalty, potentially lost revenue, or maybe a complaint that's either unheard or waiting to happen. And even when customers do get through, the speed of answer has slipped slightly. So that's risen from 17.4 seconds this year compared to 17.1 last year. Again, a small shift, but in a world where expectations are driven by all those instant experiences that we've come to know and love and everything being at our fingertips, small drops like that do add up. So when you're starting to put all this together from a customer experience side of things, it looks fragile. It pushes customers sometimes to competitors, can increase churn, and forces teams into that firefighting mode rather than focusing on adding value to conversations. The final thing that we looked at was how, when we're looking at the wider environment, the biggest shift that we are seeing is in consumer behaviour and how that's reshaping that contact and channel expectations. So very much linked to contact strategies need to evolve, and what we're seeing as an overarching theme in the industry and across many clients, customers are moving into digital first patterns and contact centers and leaders are reacting fast. 2/3 of organizations are already using or piloting AI in some way, part of their operations. And that, as expected, is a huge jump in comparison to the last couple of years. The mix of tools that teams are adopting are much more aligned to the customer behavior that we're seeing. More than 50% are using chatbots, 56% are using virtual or AI agents today. So it's reflecting in what contact centers say drives their competitive edge as well. So we know 42% cite advanced technology, automation, being fast and responsive ways that organizations are getting ahead. So these things go hand in hand. Customers want fast, they want the channels of their choice. If you can't respond at pace that they expect, they'll perhaps move along, choose a business that can. And it also helps when scaling your workforce to meet that demand as well without scaling costs. But the biggest shift that we're seeing is one that we touched on earlier, and that it's the one that creates the most operational pressure for a lot of businesses. And it's how much harder for those more outbound focused teams, how much harder it is for customers to actually reach customers. So our report showed that average outbound connect rate is at 43%, with over a third of organizations sitting in the 20 to 39% range. And even when calls do connect, 27% reach the right person. And then leaders stated that that means that 73% of outbound attempts don't often meet that intended contact in that first attempt. So this is a shift in consumer behavior. People are screening calls, blocking unknown numbers, communicating through apps and social channels, and expect an asynchronous interaction. And traditional outbound dialing alone simply doesn't cut it anymore. And that it harks back to a webinar that we did last month around evolving contact strategies to make sure that you are not just doing the same thing that you did 3, 4, 5 years ago that may have worked then, and spotting the patterns and those changing customer behaviors and trends in the data. So when we talk about those changing trends, what does it mean in practice? Customers are potentially harder to reach. They expect faster, more personalized engagement, and they are increasingly expect AI-driven journeys that remove friction. So for teams engaging with customers, it means those things. Contact strategies need to evolve. We need to meet people where they are. You must move quickly. And without the right insight, without understanding which conversations are driving outcomes and which don't, and the ways that they are, it becomes really difficult to keep up with competitors that are doing that. The shift is exactly why clarity in your data when it really matters. So when trends like this accelerate, guesswork isn't good enough. You need that evidence, you need insight, and you need to know what's actually happening inside conversations so that you can adapt with confidence. So with that setting the scene, I'm very glad that Connor's here to now talk through some of the key questions that we know leaders are asking about their data and conversations that are happening in the contact center.
Thanks, Kayleigh. So I go and spend a lot of time sitting down with our clients that have conversation analytics solutions. And when I speak with them, they all have kind of similar challenges that they raise. They're really surprisingly very consistent. So everybody wants to understand what's happening inside those conversations that are happening in their contact center. But the answers often sit behind like small QA samples, anecdotal feedback, or performance dashboards, and they only tell part of the stories. So leaders that I speak to want to know what objections are holding us back, how well the agents handle them. If we only have a 2% sample, well, is that actually representative of the other 98%? Which agents are missing opportunities, missing buying signals, and why are they doing that? Which issues are data problems and which are more coaching problems? Then we also have kind of more operational pressure stuff. So how do we reduce wrap time and still keep efficiency high? And we have some like market insight elements as well. So how do we spot market trends or competitor mentions so that we can act early on the changing strategy of a competitor? So they're big questions, and most teams simply don't have clear, confident answers because they don't have visibility of the full picture. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the use cases that I've like sat down and spoke to people about. So I have gone into organizations and they have been looking at subject access requests, data breaches, and complaints. Okay, so that's a big element. They have like 30 days to turn these things around, and they want to make sure that they're captured. If something gets misdispositioned, they don't want to lose that. They want to see kind of any attempt by a customer to initiate litigation. Want to keep a close eye on that, and other kind of alerting elements like complaints. We also see a lot of folks kind of use our AI assistant within our conversational analytics tools to do agent audit reviews. So is this agent asking open questions? Are they polite? Are they sticking to the BANT, STAR, SPIN, whatever methodology that I'm kind of implementing? Then we also see kind of a lot of folks who are looking to build business cases around data refreshes. So they might, I don't know, be calling customers, and they might have a set of data on those prospects, and they say, "Hey, we know you're with X company, and we wanted to speak to you about your contract with them." And the customer immediately says, "I'm not with them," and the conversation starts off on the wrong foot. All right, so it's like you can tell exactly how many of those like instances there are, and it helps you build business cases for elements. I also see people using it a lot of the times for short calls, so calls less than 30 seconds long. So AI tools are great, but when calls are very short, then it can be difficult for the AI to have the kind of level of accuracy that you need to understand the reasons behind those calls. So you can split those up to see, right, well, these were calls that were blocked by a gatekeeper. These were calls where decision makers were unavailable. These were calls where competitors have got there first. And those were calls where there's kind of unqualified data. I've seen a lot of people lately look for the iOS 26 AI call screening. So a feature that was introduced by Apple, when was it, about 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago? So that it kind of transcribes the call directly to your screen and allows you to accept or reject it as a customer. So we've been keeping careful track on those through our conversational analytics platform, and we're only seeing that really impacting in quite a small way right now, like 0.07% of the connect rate. But it's something I definitely want to keep an eye on and use the tool to do that. I see a lot of people use it for objection trending and agent misdisposition calls. So you see a lot of answer machines that are dispositioned as not interested. That means that they're not going to get called back for 30 days, 45 days, and you're burning through data. We see a lot of people use the conversation analytics tools for quality assurance and compliance. So whether that be kind of ID&V and ensuring it's done, making sure that like certain statements are made, making sure that in sales there's like a kind of a consent statement that's read out, those type of things. And then we see I've sat down with a number of clients who are using it for agent behavioral issues. So whether that's kind of long times in rap, talking to people beside, whether that is like swearing, whether that is tone. So all being able to identify all of those and kind of understanding where kind of empathy drops off a cliff as things get more negative towards the end of the day. And finally, I suppose, and it's one of the examples I'm going to use later on when we have a look at this system itself. And I see a lot of people using it for vulnerability identification. So whether that's kind of emotional well-being, whether that's abuse and coercion, age-related factors, physical well-being. So being able to pull out all of those elements. So especially if you're in a financial environment, to ensure that you are kind of treating customers fairly and identifying those vulnerable cases. All right. that said, I think we'll move straight along to a demonstration. Okay, so I thought I'd take a look with you all and see what this looks like in action. We'll focus on all of the new things that have been added over the last couple of months, if that's okay. So first off, when we log in, straight away we're presented with a dashboard now. This is new. So you'll see the number of calls that's in your system, the number of hours transcribed, and the number of AI insights that have been created on the top of them. If I look at my kind of breakdowns here, I'll see all of the different groups of calls that I'm interested in, and we call them views. So I'm interested in improving visibility in customer service, some renewal calls. I'm interested in buying signals that I've identified on calls that ended up with an outcome of not interested. I'm doing some compliance monitoring, and I am identifying groups of calls for ID and V checks that I want to do with and evaluate with an AI assistant. You'll see for each of these whether they're trending up or down or what the success in them all is. Okay. Now, next we have all of the calls here, and this has changed in kind of recent months and got a bit bigger, much more easy to use, thankfully. So I can click into any of these things here, and you'll immediately see the summary, the total transcript, and the AI assistant. All right, AI assistant's really handy. I can have a look at my kind of recent history. Look, I have a scorecard here. So it says you're a QA analyst, score the agent's performance using the following criteria. So I allocate points across opening and verification, across discovery and needs analysis, product explanation and value, and so forth. So I'll just click that straight in and see what it will score me as. Oop, my apologies. Here we go. So overall total score 78 out of 100, and some notes that go along with it. And for each of the steps, it's explaining why it's taken those decisions. Right, super handy. Now, if I kind of move along and we'll go into the all data, that represents kind of 100% of the data that we have in the system. You'll see that there are some nice new graphics around this and nice new charting that like kind of clearly lays out like the distribution of the calls in the segment that I'm interested in looking at. So all data obviously represents 100% of the calls that I'm looking at. I can see kind of the distribution by call volume, by average duration, by success, by agents. I can show that as stacked or area. I can see the breakdowns in between these things for individual users, teams. I can see the breakdown of all of these calls by the various different topics. We continue to have our objections data, really good for kind of understanding which objections are the most common so that you can kind of create sales plays to push back on them and handle them effectively. We have extended out the sentiment that we have in this system. So we always had this kind of concept of overall sentiment. Again, we've just kind of made it a lot nicer. So I can see that as an area. I can maybe see it as kind of volume versus percentage breakdown. If I look at it for perhaps last week, we'll be able to see it over time. And that negative kind of sentiment was flat, which is good. Then we have peak and end sentiment. So at the peak of the call, what was the sentiment looking like? And as the agent and customer signed off, what did the sentiment look like there? And from there, you kind of get some very interesting analytics that you can dig into. So for calls that were highly positive at the peak and at the end, they might be best practice calls. Highly negative, definitely want to drill into those. And those that were kind of turned around, how did that happen? Like, and can I replicate that? Is that some good like objection handling that's happening there? And those that turned around negatively, thankfully that's much smaller, but I want to understand what's happening there within those two. I have my performance here, so can understand exactly kind of how that sentiment and that group of calls relates to how successful each of them were, the topics within it, and then finally the interactions. Okay. Now, all of the views that I have here saved on the left, they were in the dashboard earlier on. And I thought it might be handy for us to kind of go and create one. So one of the use cases that I brought up in the presentation earlier was how to kind of, because some of our customers are using this to identify vulnerable customers of theirs. So there's a lot of different types of vulnerability. You obviously have like abuse and coercion, emotional well-being, physical well-being, but there's also maybe one of them we'll try now is age-related concerns. So if I kind of look for transcripts that contain elderly or let me see, alone, maybe hard of hearing, memory problems, carer, all of those kind of bits and pieces, and I add them in there and apply them, then you'll see we have a 1% slice of the data from last week. So I'm just going to bring this onto this week. So we can only have 12 calls. Okay, let's go and drill into the interactions for those 12. Fabulous. And let's pick out a call from here. Maybe this one. Okay. What are they mentioning here? Yeah. So this guy's saying he's getting a bit elderly. I've got 2 children. So, and we'll use our AI assistant in here as well to say, could this customer be considered vulnerable? And why? Okay. Okay. He's a widower in his 70s. He's expressed concerns about mitigating inheritance tax for his kids. All right, and you see it just kind of brings it right back up. Now, what's also great about this AI assistant is that not only can you kind of ask questions on the fly, but it has a whole prompt library. So if I kind of view all of the prompts in here, then you have all of these kind of suggested ones here. All right, and there's quite a few of them, and they're categorized, and you can bookmark them. But also you can kind of create your own. So earlier on, you saw that I had kind of written up a prompt to say, as a QA analyst, I want to do these things. This is the type of business that I'm in, and these are the points I want to allocate them. And essentially, I would do that in here. Just write it out, create it, and then apply it to the individual call. So I hope you see it's come on a lot in the last few months, and our customers are really enjoying using it. And if you'd like to kind of reach out and start seeing what I could do for you, then I'd love to talk to you. Fabulous. And I think we showed you some of the objection data in the conversational analytics tool earlier. And this essentially is data taken across like a whole segment of our customers. So it comes from 722,000 different objections over a 6-month period. And so from this, you can see that like agents successfully overcame 39% of the objections, while 61% of them still remain unresolved or unhandled. Okay. Need objections represent 40%, 46% of all the objections, but they have the lowest conversion rate. So this is the most challenging category to overcome. So need objections are things like not interested, contractual obligations, doesn't qualify, change in circumstances, and no immediate need. Okay. If we come on to the next one, you'll see that the top 2, like individual objections across the board, are not interested and no immediate need. Whereas no immediate need, the success rate is like, looks like it's hovering there around 40, 45, 46%. You're not interested. That's like your classic is there at 23% in terms of like the success rate of handling that objection. So still the most challenging thing to do. All right.
Thank you, Conor. Good. So this is just a real customer story. So this is an organization called ICX. They're a customer engagement provider for brands like Nissan, Suzuki. They replaced time-consuming manual call reviews with conversation analytics. They're currently using transcripts and AI-powered search to surface those key calls, flag compliance issues and uncover some of the performance insights instantly. In a lot of the ways that Conor showed, I think the real power behind conversation analytics and how MaxContact has built it is the flexibility that you can actually, you can use it in the way that is shaped around your business. So the team now identifies those compliance issues much faster, delivers data-driven training as well through sentiment and objection tracking. That's really feeding into whether that's agent development, agent training, one-to-one discussions, for example, performance reviews, really to help drive that increased or address any issues, I suppose, but drive that performance across the team in a way that I suppose is more representative across every conversation, and responds to client inquiries much more effectively as well. So it's a really lovely quote from Sarah and use cases to how they're using conversation analytics. So I think Conor did cover most of the things that we had covered in our demo, but what we will do is we'll share the link as well to the full demo afterwards as well. And we'll go to the Q&A panel to see if there's any questions at this stage. Just before I do, just a reminder, we have got the benchmark insights report as well. So it has got a loads more data in there. It covers 300 leaders, like I said, but it's across the different use cases as well. So whether you are more sales, service, or collections focused, it focuses on the different pressures that teams are facing. They're not 300 leaders from our customers, it's across the UK. So it's got that agnostic view as well. So you can see how you compare as an organisation, whether you're very similar to organisations that are in similar boats as you. And it highlights where teams are improving, where effectiveness is getting more difficult, where technology and AI is helping shape the contact centre operations as well. So we'll also add that as a link to the follow-up email. But yeah, if there's any questions that you have, please feel free to drop them in the chat and then we can go from there. Take a look. So is conversation analytics or spoken available in Contact Hub? Conor, I'll let you take that one.
So some of the insights that are created by conversational analytics go into Contact Hub. So you feed in the summaries, the sentiment, and any objections that happen on an individual call. But obviously, it's just like the interaction history for an individual call. It doesn't have the power of being able to do this at scale across the board and understand what the trends are in the data.
Okay. Thank you. How can organizations set their objections? Is that like predetermined by MaxContact, or is that something that can be tailored to the organization itself?
So we have a standard set of objections, and I'm always looking to kind of expand them to take into account use cases in various different industries. We do keep them common, so we can extend them for like individual customers so that they kind of make sense for whether they're kind of in a charity space or an insurance space, a financial space or a telco space. Yeah, but I like to keep them common so that we can do this type of benchmarking information, and I can show you that like across like various different sectors and contact centers, you know, here's where we see the challenges with objections.
Okay. Thanks, Conor. So what sort of service do you provide as part of launching conversation analytics? I think at the start I meant, just for context, Conor, I think you missed, I mentioned that you do sit down throughout engagement with customers to understand how best to use the platform. What does that actually look like for, I suppose, for other customers?
Well, there's a series of templates that are in the solution itself that we can use to kind of leverage and create like an initial set of views. But equally, we'll sit down as part of the implementation. We'll kind of understand what it is you're trying to achieve out of it. Part of the implementation will be to define a set of success criteria, and then we'll like help you to craft those kind of AI assistant prompts and those kind of the logic for those saved views in order to kind of meet that success criteria.
Yeah.
Now, equally, I often go back to customers kind of a month, 2 months, 3 months down the line and sit with them, because I think you start with something and then you see the kind of power of it, and then you begin to kind of think, oh, I could use it for this, and this too.
Okay, thanks, Conor. Good. Let me have another look. Good. I think that is all the questions. So unless there's one that pops in whilst I'm talking, then we will end it there. But thank you very much for joining us and persevering through those tech challenges. We'll send out a summary of the demo video itself, the slides and the benchmark report as well, all for you guys to reflect on afterwards. But thank you very much for joining us on our last webinar of the year.
Take care. Happy Christmas.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Have a good break. Bye-bye.